After the fall of Iwo Jima on March 26, 1945, the Americans have encountered the down days until the capture of Okinawa, the last crucial stepstone on the road of locating 300 miles or 560 kilometers of the south of Kyushu Island, offered air bases and fleet anchorage, codenamed Operation Iceberg. The invasion was between the Army, the Navy, and the Marines. Lieutenant General Simon D. Buckingham, Jr. established the U.S. 10th Army, which have the 7 battle-hardened divisions of the Marine and the 4 Army additional 180mm combat troops. The counterattack on the Raymond Spears of the 5th Fleet, which included 265 warships, 119 amphibious assault vehicles, and greatly outnumbered the defenders in total air superiority. The Americans were no arm and no mean to have the battle lost by the Japanese puns of an echo of nightmares of GIs. Now they have faced an even larger garrison, preparing an elaborate network of underground defenses to defend the entire 60-mile or 96 kilometers long Japanese forces fortified the southern and Afan hill terrain. General Mushi Padanka, stationed in Tonga forces of the Central and Northern Partition of Okinawa, of the Central, the most of 60,000 soldiers and 9,000 naval infantry, of the 26,000 local conscripts across Okinawa. Since the Americans had the number advantage and firepower advantage, Japanese used terrain to their advantage, utilizing reverse slopes, and quite in April 1945, complete with 60 and 96 kilometers of tunnels, enough for an entire 32nd Army of weapons and ammunition, spiking food and the German commanders, slashing all animals, and getting as much food as possible. The potatoes instead of the rice of the naval being stolen, they had the support of the bombardment. Next day, American forces had landed on the core of the Erito, the small Barenga. The Japanese forces took 5 days to capture it, and the shelter for ships that were damaged by kamikaze attacks. Actual invasion was designed to be L-Day of April 1st. Contrary to expectations of the Americans, encountering over virtual opposition of the beaches that the Japanese were nowhere to be found. On L-Day, they had captured Yanjing and Yanding. Of the 60,000 men that made it offshore and consequently moved up north, while the army moved south, fighting its way through several fortified outposts. The spear of the fighting of the rocky terrain, despite the Pentecost, and the operation was begun. On the Tango, April 6, 1 suicide way Okinawa included a battleship Yamato and 9 smaller warships. However, the American submarine and aircraft have located them, and the 5th Fleet had launched 386 plane air strikes that sank the Yamato and 5 other escorts, emblematic of the end of the largest battleship in history. On April 8th, U.S. troops reached Okinawa of the series of Japanese fortifications stretched across Okinawa was the unreabolished of the bloodshed began. During the initial attacks, the American was often advancing into straight prepared killing zones of the slaughtered on masses, contrary and the machine pre-fire mortar fire. In the response, they began using artillery to keep the enemy underground before sending small units into the gap between the enemy pillboxes. However, this tactic only partially effective, with the Americans continued to sustain heavy losses to the enemy of the back foot of the German launch-night of them due to unfamiliar terrain. Afterwards, both sides went to gear up, and the next round of the Marines that way whooped Japanese in the north and their little strongholdings in the south. Okinawa it began with the bombardment of 600 something planes with 18 warships and 300 artillery pieces. No effect to the Japanese though. They were safe inside their underground positions and fighting fiercely on the 6th Division, using manually and reverse slopes of the firing range of the destruction, inflicting American forces inflicted casualties. By 22nd, however, the 22nd Division has been pushed back 1.5 kilometers, was down to the 50% strength. The Japanese were about to come bro in Okinawa. There has to be a last straw. General Buchan instructed the proposal to the end of the Japanese dispatch of the 24th Division and the 44th Independent Brigade Division. On the 23rd, the units have shored up of the 60th Division. They captured the Katsu Island, the second line of defense of the 1.6 kilometers defense line. Japanese defenses of Shuri Island was refused to turn the slope. By now, you should know the reverse slope is one of the most buzzword result of the American attack. This is Battle of Okinawa.